Hey everybody, welcome to this recap episode of How to Be a Real One Percenter. I've just finished a podcast with the amazing Christie Whitehill. What an amazing conversation. And you know what I love about this podcast the most is that each person, each guest on it brings something different, a different type of insight. And it's precisely what I hope would happen, that we could share things, different things each time. And Christy definitely brought some real gold to us, and I should have known with Christy because she's so dedicated to health and to well-being that she would give us some gold around that. And talking about a lot about her story and about how beliefs led to different health situations that she had. And it's not something like it's for some people that's just going to be a completely understandable thing that we go, oh yeah, there's of course a connection between mind and body. And for other people, this might be, what do you mean there's a connection between mind and body? They've always been treated as different things. But Christy just did such a great job of helping us to understand. Like, she just took us all the way through. When I asked her, what did you want to share with people? What would you share with people to help make a difference? She talked about the story and uncovering, doing the courageous work of looking within and seeing what limiting beliefs were there. And, she shared one of her limiting beliefs being not important, and blaming herself for even something like a pregnancy not going the way that she had really hoped it would go, and instead of seeing that was happening, she blamed herself. And I think if we all look really honestly, we'll see that we do things like this. We're hard on ourselves, we judge ourselves, we put ourselves down. In fact, I sometimes say to people, if you did an experiment where you just were able to just, have alarms at certain times, pause and just say whatever thought is in your mind, we'll see just how much that negativity is there, self-judgment is there, or judgment of what's happening or other people. Like, it's a lot of negativity in the mind. And Christy spoke a number of different times about the importance of having a positive self-talk, she called it, just supportive self-talk. And what we uncovered in these conversations is how even unconsciously, without our knowledge, we can have these backstories that come up, and again, Christy did such a great job about even taking that back to growing up with entrepreneurial parents, and from the get-go believing that she had things to prove, but it led to perhaps the opposite, which is the need to do something and not being good enough and not being important unless we attain something. And I think one of the important things that came out of this discussion for me was how that births motives for what we do. So instead of just doing what we do in life because we love it, we do it because we feel we have to, or we have something to prove, and it becomes stressful. And I was really appreciative of Christy being willing to share her story about how that stress led to some, even recently, some very significant health conditions that came from stress, from things like fear and grief. And I think it's really important. And what I would add, and she said so much in the podcast herself, but the only thing I would add is to say, well, what we do with that is we say, well, what's causing that grief, right? We look at what is that limiting belief, if we want to call it limiting, what is that belief that's causing the grief? As I often say, it's never what's happening in life that's causing our emotion. So we've always been taught from the time we were, tiny, that something that's happening in life is causing our feeling. Like, you've upset me, you've hurt me, these types of things that we live with well into adulthood and carry through our lives. But when we actually peel the layers back, we find that it's not what's happening that's leading to those emotions. It's what we believe about it. And when Christy said, she was selling this business that was something she had built over such a number of years, it was like losing a part of herself. But that was the belief, right? It wasn't losing part of herself, it was just selling the business. And I was just really appreciative of how she shared that, because it's what we do. I know myself, in the years before I understood some of the work that I now practice and use with people I work with, I thought my business was me. And if it was successful, I was a success. And if the business wasn't a success, I was a failure. And everything became identified. Christy spoke about that identification with things, when in reality, they're just two separate things, right? And it's just the belief that leads to all that stress. And it's such an important thing for two reasons, or at least two reasons. One is, when we investigate it, we find out, well, it's just not true. Like, if a business doesn't work out, or if we don't have it anymore, it doesn't fundamentally change who we are, or a relationship, or money, or whatever the case might be. Whether we have it or don't have it, it's not a marker of who we are. And believing it's a marker of who we are, even if we don't realize we're doing that, leads to significant stress. And the second thing that's really important about that is the impact that stress has on the body. And so I was really appreciative for Christie to bring that up. And what I would say in a recap of this episode for people, the recaps are really about if you want to take this information and go forward, how do you utilize it to gain the kind of freedom that you have. Like I was just looking at Christie on that podcast, just seeing how you could see the freedom of mind that she was experiencing from having done the work and addressing limiting beliefs, so they're not running her life. Now, of course, they still come up. They come up for me. I know they come up for Christie, but it's the matter of distance from them. How much work has already been put in, and how many stories are we free from, or to what degree. It just reduces that stress. And of course, Christie said something really important, which was the body shows it up, relationships shows it up, our business or our career results show it up. And it's interesting that from changing the mind, it shows up in all these different capacities. So if you want to make use of that going forward, the recap episode, what I would suggest is to really is to look at that. Christie said something that just was so much gold, which was if something keeps happening in your life, it's worth stopping and saying, what's the belief in here that's actually leading to the circumstance repeating? And it's something that you can do. If you go, well, hey, there's some part of my life that just seems to keep not going right. Well, what am I projecting? What am I thinking that's creating that reaction? And it might seem strange that it's showing up on the outside, but it is precisely how it works, that what's going on in here has a lot to do with what's going on in the world and what's going on inside of our body. So if you want to utilize this going forward, my suggestion would be do exactly what Christie suggested there. Think of something that keeps showing up in your life that may not be what you truly want to be happening. Think about that and then ask the question, what am I thinking and projecting that's actually creating that outcome that continues to happen? So for example, if business results just don't keep happening, we're not growing a business in the way that we want, you might say something like, what am I putting out there? Am I thinking that times are tough right now? Because when we think times are tough, our whole demeanor shows it. So when we go to talk to a potential customer, we're already down in ourselves. We're already basically a no inside of our own mind. And so we project that no, they pick up on it, and then they say, well, no, thanks. But then you see somebody else come along that does the same thing. They're enthusiastic. They don't have those limiting beliefs. They're more attractive to that customer, and that's where they go. So look in your life for places that aren't working the way that you want them to, and ask one of the most powerful questions, and that's, what am I projecting? What am I thinking? What limiting beliefs am I having that's actually creating this? It's a very, very powerful thing to do. So once again, I want to thank my guest, Christie, for being on the podcast last time. As I thought she would, she did bring a lot of gold, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time on the How to Be a Real 1%er podcast.